Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and my thoughts in general in regards to the next generation of consoles, which should be hitting later this year around the holiday season, assuming that coronavirus does not negatively impact manufacturing any more than it already has. So earlier today, Sony premiered a video over on YouTube where they went in depth into a lot of the features of the console. Now, a lot of people were disappointed with this video, which didn't really surprise me because I had already suspected that the presentation that they were going to show was going to be something that was aimed more to the target audience of GDC, which is the Games Developer Conference that was supposed to be taking place, which naturally was also canceled because of the current coronavirus situation. So they had this presentation prepared and they figured, hey, maybe we can give something to the people and they can get an idea of what to expect from our console, but I wouldn't really call this particular video a console reveal, and I would most definitely have not have titled it The Road to PlayStation 5, because when you put a title like that on YouTube, it generates a set of expectations, which a lot of people assume that they were going to get to see the console, they assumed that they were going to get to see like announcements of video games, they assumed that it was going to be like a presentation, like, you know, a consumer level presentation, which clearly wasn't the case. The presentation that was posted earlier today was aimed at game developers so that they could get familiar with the technology of the console itself. They just decided to do it publicly because people have kind of been starving for information about the PlayStation 5. And ultimately, I think that they most likely came to regret that particular decision, because a lot of people are flaming the video. They're saying it was boring and all of these other things. Now, understand something. I have a bit of a background in IT, so in a lot of ways, it was interesting for me to see some of the technology involved in the PlayStation 5. Did it influence me one way or the other? Not really, because, I think that this goes both for the Xbox as well as the PlayStation ecosystems. It's all really about what games do you want to play? Like, why do you come to consoles or why do you go to PC? It's never really about, oh, I came to this console because it's the most powerful console. I don't think I've ever thought of it like that personally. Like a long time ago, I had to make the decision between whether I wanted to get a PlayStation 3 or an Xbox 360. Right, and because this was the time that I decided I'm going to get into console gaming. Because before that, I was just doing PC, and I think a bit earlier than that, I had like a Wii. But I wanted to get into the more mainstream consoles, and I had to make a decision whether I wanted to get an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3. And at the time, I weighed all of the options, and I ended up going with the PlayStation 3 for three main reasons, which was God of War, Wipeout, as well as Demon Souls. These were the three main reasons that caused me to go with the PlayStation 3. Now, when the PlayStation 4 came out, the reason I went with the PlayStation 4 is because I had friends of mine that were also going to get a PlayStation 4, and that was also a very easy decision for me, which is like, look, most of my friends are going to get a PlayStation 4. I'm already somewhat invested into the ecosystem of this console, so I'm going to get a PlayStation 4 as well. That was like super simple, and I just kept on rolling with the PS4. I did eventually get an Xbox One because I was super excited about Scalebound. That was a big mistake. So I ended up never really using my Xbox One for much because, as we all know, Scalebound ended up getting canceled. But that's pretty much the way that I personally tend to make my decision making when it comes to consoles. It's never really about, oh, I'm going to get this console because it's more powerful than this other one. No, you get this console for a number of factors. And one of those factors when it comes to me picking, for instance, the PlayStation 5 is going to be, look, I already have a massive PlayStation 4 library that I'm going to be able to just bring up to the PlayStation 5. That is going to be very much a no-brainer for me. Now, if eventually there comes a game that is going to be exclusive to Xbox One or has enough exclusive features that I'm going to be tempted to get it on Xbox One, actually, I shouldn't say Xbox One, it's Xbox Series X. I'm sorry, it's a really long name, okay? But if a game comes out that maybe not just one game. Like I feel like I would need more than just one game to really tempt me to go onto that platform. But say, for instance, if it was a game like Monster Hunter. Imagine Capcom would announce, okay, next Monster Hunter is an Xbox One X exclusive. Again, I said Xbox One X, Xbox Series X exclusive. Like, that to me would be a no-brainer, because that game it's my favorite game of all time. Monster Hunter World is my favorite game of all time, period. So it's very much a no-brainer if a game like that ends up going to a platform. It's like, that's the platform that I'm going to want to get. Or if it's exclusive to Nintendo Switch. I already own a Switch, so I would get it there for sure. But like, it's always about the games, not necessarily about the hardware. Right? That's always the way that I look at it. It's about games, it's about convenience, it's about everything, because now we're going to get a bunch of people in the comment section saying, oh, PC is better and it's got more frame rate and it's got better visuals and everything on PC is better. And you're right. So long as your wallet is deep enough, everything on PC is most definitely better. You can always get better hardware on PC. You can upgrade your PC as you go along. You can do a million things on a PC, which is, I work with 3 different PCs on a daily basis. I have a laptop at home and I have 2 PCs at the studio, one for streaming and one for playing games. So it's like, I work with 3 PCs on a daily basis, which in a lot of ways, it's just one less reason for me to want an Xbox Series X, because of the fact that, like, according to my understanding, all of the games that come to the Series X are going to come to PC day and date. So if I already have a PC, I don't really have a reason to own an Xbox One X. Having said that, though, if most of my games were available on the Xbox One X, I would probably want one. Like, if most of the stuff that I planned on playing was both on PC and on Xbox One X, I'd probably want one for the portability factor. And I understand that a lot of people are going to bring up, oh, but gaming laptops. And it's like, I don't like gaming laptops. I don't like the idea of gaming laptops because they're flimsy, they're very prone to overheating, the battery life dies like super fast. At least this is my personal experience with gaming laptops in the past. And it's just something that I avoid. Like, when you push a laptop hard enough for 1 or 2 years, that laptop is going to show some really beefy signs of wear and tear. And you're going to start noticing it on performance, and you're going to start noticing it on heating issues. Like, gaming laptops, again, this is my personal experience, they require either you do a lot of maintenance and you're really super careful with them and you're vacuuming them like every other week or something like that to make sure that those airflows are always working and all of that. Gaming laptops is not something that is a particularly appealing prospect to me. I like the idea of like a dedicated gaming system, not something where I check my emails and go to YouTube and game on the side. So usually my main platforms for gaming would end up being consoles, which is why I'm saying, like, if the software that I wanted was on the Xbox Series X, I would probably get one. But the thing is, most of the software that I'm interested in right now that has been announced, everything is on the PlayStation 5. So there's not a lot of reasons for me personally to go to the Xbox One X, Xbox Series X. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be on the other camp. There's going to be a lot of people that, like, they're invested in the Xbox ecosystem because they've been there maybe since the days of the 360. And those people might want to go to the Xbox Series X, and that's perfectly fine, because at the end of the day, it's all about, where are your friends? What is the platform that is most convenient to you? Is it the PC? Then keep upgrading your PC, keep playing it on the PC. Is it the Xbox Series X? Then buy the Xbox Series X and keep playing your video games on the Xbox ecosystem. Is it on the PlayStation? Then buy the PlayStation 5 and keep enjoying your games on the PlayStation 5. It's that simple. Is it on the Switch? Then, you don't really have to buy a Switch because they're not really coming out for a new one this year, according to what they have said. So that really shouldn't even be an issue. So at the end of the day, it's always about the software, it's about the communities, and it's about where you choose to game. Like, this whole teraflops situation, like, it's never been something that I've given that much thought. Now, if we get into the nitty-gritty of some of the specs that were discussed during this particular presentation, a couple of things that were very interesting to me was the fact that they're coming up with a proprietary thing for their SSD. Their SSD is going to be able to get some really sweet speeds, but not only that, it is going to be built into the architecture of the console itself. Now, I'm not going to get too technical with it, but let's just say if you are developing a game specifically for the PlayStation 5, you should be able to take more advantage of the hardware than if you're developing a multi-platform game. Now, in a lot of ways, for everyone that is already invested in the PlayStation 5, which just happens to be my case, I mean, invested in the PlayStation ecosystem in general, in a lot of ways, that's a positive thing, the fact that there's proprietary technology. But when it comes to the multi-platform effort, so people that want to be able to play with their friends that maybe are in different platforms, that is going to be a weird situation. Because, like, sure, if you develop stuff specifically for the PlayStation 5, it's going to run great on the PlayStation 5. And it's going to take advantage of those faster load speeds. It's going to take advantage of the 3D audio thing, which I will get into detail further ahead in this video. And it's going to take advantage of all of that stuff. And it's going to be great if you play it on PlayStation 5 and if the software is developed specifically for PlayStation 5. Now, if that software is developed for multi-platform, so maybe someone is developing something on the PC, and maybe they'll port it to the PlayStation later. I think that is where the PlayStation is not going to excel as much unless the people specifically code those ports to take advantage of these specific features of the PlayStation 5. Depending on how this whole thing is managed, because, Mark Cerny is saying, oh, it's super easy. You don't even have to worry too much about writing specific code. Everything just kind of works. I mean, maybe it will, maybe it won't. Will it then just you port the code over and it just runs faster on PlayStation 5? If that's the case, great. Then multi-platforms will work just fine regardless of the platform that you're in. But if it requires a little bit more effort on the developer side, I could see a couple of problems arising here and there. And it's like I would really like to see Sony just open up the doors and just say, look, we have these standards in place which are going to ensure that, if you have friends that play a multi-platform game and they're playing it on a PC or they're playing on the Xbox Series X, we're going to have these systems in place so that you can play with them. That would be something important. We're going to have these hooks in place to make it easier for people to port stuff onto our console. That was stuff that I would have liked to have heard during that presentation. Another thing that I would very much like to have heard in that presentation was backwards compatibility all the way up to PlayStation 1, which did not happen. There were rumors talking about this. I've reported on this multiple times because, there were indications that Sony was patenting some stuff that it looked like they could potentially be bringing a ton of backwards compatibility into the console. I personally, considering that I began with the PlayStation 3, I was very interested in some PlayStation 3 titles that I own. I would very much like them to be playable on the PlayStation 5. That is not going to be a thing. I know that there's probably tons of people out there that have all of these titles from the PlayStation 2 that they would like to see playable on the PlayStation 5. Also most likely not happening. The reason I'm saying this is because this particular presentation was there was a spot there where it was specifically talking about backwards compatibility, and that would have been perfect to announce that they have backwards compatibility all the way to the PlayStation 3, and it didn't happen. And that's why, I don't think it's going to happen. If it was going to happen, it was probably going to be revealed on this particular press conference, particularly because it is for game developers, and potentially it could, be interesting for game developers that have their games that they've published in PlayStation 3 and in PlayStation 2. It could be interesting for some of them to be like, oh, right, my game, and maybe I could do this change in the code. And, I think this would have been a good opportunity to reveal that, and they didn't do it. So, again, I don't think that's happening, and that was personally very disappointing for me. They did say they're supporting games from PlayStation 4 Pro and PlayStation 4, and another thing that was concerning to me was the fact that they said most of them are going to work on launch. And I was like, whoa, you're not even going to guarantee all of them? That, again, was a little bit because I believe that the Series X just says, no, everything works, whatever, doesn't even matter. Everything just moves forward, which is kind of see, that's the type of advantages that to me are more important. Now, I don't necessarily have Xbox One titles that I care that much about, so it's not a big deal. But for people that do have that, let's say people have both platforms. Maybe they have the PlayStation 4 for the exclusives, and they have the Xbox One X where they play most of their multi-platforms, and maybe they have a lot of their friends in that console. For those people, that the Xbox Series X has taken a step ahead in the fact that, like, look, our backwards compatible just works, okay? And we have the cloud solution if you want to play stuff on your phone and all of that jazz, right? Like, all of that stuff is just going to work, and all of the games that you own are moving forward, and all of those will be playing. Like, all of that stuff is a big boon to the Series X. And that's something that the PlayStation 5 doesn't have. So, as you can see, there's always going to be advantages to one side or the other. There's much more to this than, like, oh, the amount of teraflops or processing power, which clearly the Series X is apparently, from the specs that have been discussed and all that. I don't want to go too in depth with it, but like with all the specs that have been discussed, supposedly what we're looking at is that the Series X is going to have more processing power, more GPU power, but the PlayStation 5 is going to have better load speeds because of the custom SSD drive that they are working with. This also comes with limitations though, because you can expand the hard drive capability of the Xbox Series X, but you cannot expand the PlayStation 5 capabilities at launch. Now, at least you probably won't be able to, because they said right now we're still working with people, we're still trying to figure out how we're going to do it. So they have an expansion bay in the PlayStation 5 where you will be able to plug in, commercial SSDs. But, you're plugging in commercial SSDs to this proprietary technology that they have with their own custom SSD controller, and things might not be as fast, things might not be super compatible. They're going to be testing it, they're working out a program right now. But basically their message was like, don't expect this stuff to be available at launch. And that is a big problem, because even though they can have like the fastest SSD on the market, it's still limited to 825 gigabytes. That's what, the number that they came up with for their hard drive. And that, to me, for starters, is like, you couldn't just have it be 1 terabyte, just like a nice round number. It had to be this weird 825. How much of that is going to be occupied by your operating system? Is this actual usable space? Because in a lot of times when you go to the PS4 and, like, let's say for instance your PS4 reports, hey, you got 100 gigabytes free, and you try to install a game and it's like, no, those 100 gigabytes free, they're going to continue free. You're not going to install anything on there because the console just does not let you use up all of the space. How much of those 825 gigabytes are actually usable? And on top of it, considering that the next generation, one of the big selling points in terms of visuals is going to be 4K 60 FPS, where the hell are you going to store all those textures, dude? Like, each game is probably going to be very near 100 gigabytes, each AAA game, at least, unless you're talking about smaller titles. Most AAA games are going to be looking at around 100 gigabytes of content. So, like, what? We get to install 6, maybe 7 games on the console? Which, I don't know about you guys. My console has a 2 terabyte drive and it's full every time. Every time I need to install something, I gotta uninstall something else. Which really, I do have this kind of hoarder mentality when it comes to video games. I'm always waiting for the apocalypse, like, say, the coronavirus, so that it's like, oh, I don't have to connect to the internet. All of my stuff's already on the hard drive. Because whereas people are like hoarding toilet paper from supermarkets, I'm hoarding video games on my game console hard drive to prepare for the apocalypse. Man, priorities. You got to get your priorities straight. But yeah, that's another thing to consider. Now, finally, one of the final things that Mark Cerny talked about is audio, which, to be honest, I think is a point that is overlooked in a lot of video games. Because, some people just think, oh, audio is whatever. What's important is to get like the most perfect friggin' pixels imaginable. But audio can really mark you, can really set the tone for an experience. And I think that a lot of times audio is very much overlooked. And when a game does audio right, you can usually tell. And I'm very curious to see how much of a difference it is going to make with all of the optimizations that they're working on in audio and all that stuff, because it is important. I don't have any like specific examples for you right now, because lately all I've been doing is playing Neo 2, as you guys know, because I've been uploading the full playthrough on here. All I've been doing is just like playing that nonstop. But yeah, I do think that audio is something that a lot of times is overlooked, and I think that it is important. And to the point that Sony is like making custom hardware to make audio just like better in positional audio and all of these things, that's very interesting to me. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily call that like a big system seller. And again, it all depends on whether or not the developers are going to make use of this technology, which in the case of multi-platform titles, I don't really see a lot of developers devoting the manpower to like, oh yeah, we need you and Jim to like figure out this PlayStation audio thing to make sure to incorporate that into our game so that we can put that on the list of features. I don't see a lot of companies doing that. Because, I mean, nowadays, it's the days where gaming companies, they just come up and they're like, oh yeah, just release the thing, like completely bust it into a complete goddamn near unplayable mess, and then we'll just fix it later. You really think that a lot of game companies are gonna come around and be like, oh yeah, let's make sure that the sound's like top notch. Dude, we'll be lucky if the game is functional nowadays, let alone even have like working audio, let alone them thinking about the 3D audio of the PlayStation 5. So, yeah, ultimately, it's going to be very curious to see how the situation develops, but I would like to, you know, send forward a bit of a message to everyone. It doesn't matter what platform you play on. It's all about, like, look, it's about the games. What games do you want to play? Where are your friends playing? Those are the things that you need to be considering. Like, all of this debate about the specs and the future-proofing and the blah, 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 blah. Like, look, dude, just think about where are your friends playing? Where are the games that you want to play? And that's the platform that you should be playing in. And if that platform is the PC, then you don't even have to worry about the next generation of consoles. If that platform is the Nintendo Switch, you don't even have to worry about it. If that platform is the Series X, you already have your mind made up. If it's the PlayStation 5, you already have your mind made up. Like, that's the way that I look at it. I'm gonna get a PlayStation 5, and maybe it will be the wrong decision in the long run. Who knows? Who knows? Nobody's gonna predict the future. But at the end of the day, here's what you gotta think about. Back in the Xbox 360 versus PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 was the less powerful console, but it was the more successful console until the very end of that generation. And then on the Xbox One generation with the PlayStation 4 was usually the most powerful until they launched the Xbox One Series, not Series X. I can't get the Xbox One names right. I'm so sorry. Feel free to flame me in the comments if you're an Xbox fan. I'm really sorry. But like the Xbox One X, right? That was the point at which Xbox One became more powerful than the PlayStation 4. But before that, in large, the PlayStation 4 was slightly more powerful than the Xbox One X. And it won. So it's like you have one generation where the weaker console kind of like won the generation. I still consider that the Xbox 360 kind of won the generation overall. So you have one generation where the weaker console was the more successful console. Then you have another generation where the more powerful console was the most successful console. And now we're going to have a generation where supposedly the Series X is going to be more powerful than the PlayStation 5. We're going to see who's going to win, technically speaking, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, so long as you had fun along the way. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Sorry if it was a little bit more rambling than I was planning on, but, you know, I just kind of got carried away. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you did not enjoy the video, hit the dislike button. Feedback is important. Leave a comment in the comment section if you want to talk to me about this, and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Hit the bell notification icon, all of that jazz. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, and may your shields never break.